Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit, and always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hey everyone, I wanted to thank my sponsors for bringing this great episode with Krisna Hanks. She's definitely a beast in the low carb community. She's doing a lot of great things to help people and just has a great perspective. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. Brought to you by Keto Mojo. They're my go-to for checking ketones and sugar levels and really double checking on the continuous glucose monitors. And they've just been so helpful. I tell you, as a company, they're great. I've used them since starting in the low carb realm. And, I just want to tell you, they've given me so much support to my practice to help integrate with my patients so that I can see ketones and sugars. And so it really helps me with what I do. I really couldn't do without their help. So Keto Mojo, thank you. And again, thank you for sponsoring this and being such a help to the low carb community. I know you've done a lot with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, and you really just go out of your way to help small practices like mine, not just focusing on the huge practices. So I greatly appreciate that. And thank you for reading this episode. And also I have to thank Health Code. You're doing some great work too, and my patients are having a lot of fun. I'm seeing great stuff, great numbers on my continuous glucose monitors and ketones. So using you two, it's such a great honor to have you both on the same team. I've had some fun with Health Code lately, making chaffles out of them. If you don't know what they are, look it up. So those of us on a low carb lifestyle, it does help us when we have a little bit of variety. So we can make chocolate Health Code chaffles and have a little bit of dessert there and have a good protein source. I also made some of Maria Emmerich's pudding. It's an egg pudding that you basically just cook up some eggs and throw in some Health Code, mix it up in the blender with some coconut milk, maybe a little bit of sweetener, a little bit of coconut, and it's really, really a great dessert to have sometimes. So anyways, thank you so much for bringing this episode. I think it's going to help a lot of people. This is a great discussion. So thank you everyone for tuning in and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today I have a cool person, someone who we have some patients in common, and everyone loves her. Krisna Hanks, welcome.
Thank you very much, Brian. Excited to be here.
So you're a health coach, an ex-professional dancer. Tell people about yourself so they get to know you a little bit better, and then we'll talk about what you do and what your approach is.
Okay. So in the words of my mom, I'm eclectic. I grew up in the Midwest with a father who was a basketball coach and probably, I think, still holds one of the records in the state of Illinois for 20 plus seasons of 20 more wins or so. So grew up with coaching kind of in my DNA. My brother also ended up being a basketball coach for a while. So there's the coaching start right away. But I, at a very young age, started taking dance classes. I started doing gymnastics and I loved it. And subsequently, I started dancing professionally at the age of 15. I was still in school, but I was lucky enough that there was a professional dance company in my small town in Quincy, Illinois. And that is pretty much what guided me along the way. So that took me to several different places in the world. First to Chicago, danced with a company called Akasha, moved to New York City, danced with a whole bunch of different choreographers in that city, ended up in the Netherlands for the latter part of my career, dancing with a whole bunch of exciting choreographers, from Lisa Ross to the Dutch National Opera to all kinds of different productions. However, along the way, like any good dancer, you have to be able to do all kinds of other things. So I'm certified in a host of avenues, all well-being associated, but movement associated, from Iyengar yoga, classical Pilates, worksite wellness, senior fitness. Obviously, I'm a health coach, so I've done also the diabetes prevention specialist program. I finished the Tim Noakes, the Coach Practitioner program, which is the more elevated program where you have to do all of those. And along the way, I got a couple degrees. I feel like I've been reinventing myself every decade. I got my master's in kinesiology at age 40 at Indiana University. I got my MBA at age 50 at the University of San Francisco. And then I recently did this Coach Practitioner program at 60 plus. So that's kind of I would say the nuts and bolts of it.
Wait a minute, 60 plus, I'm not buying that.
Oh yeah.
I'm not buying that. Holy cow. You've done well for sure.
Thank
you. So, and it's great because you have so many tools that you can reach to people and connect with, because you have such a varied background. I think it's so great to have so many different degrees, and you may pull this arrow out or this arrow. It's so nice to have an eclectic background, because then you can identify with people who are, because just yesterday I was talking to my office manager about her kids, and she said, yeah, ballet was one of the most devastating things for her kids. Like, oh, if you gain a pound, they weighed her every week, and it was very you had to stretch, you had to do this, and they go, look, you're too big. And she was thin, she's very thin, and they go, no, you're too big, you got to lose weight. And so from a young age, it was really, really challenging. Plus the competition, and it's so, and it can be subjective of who gets to dance and who doesn't get to. And so it's so, mentally, it seems so challenging.
It is not a profession if you don't have a lot of chutzpah, as my dad would say. The mental challenges are tough, but I had such a passion. I remember this sort of anecdotal sort of from my mom at one time. I think I was maybe 6 or 7 or so, and she said, to my dad, Chris wants to take more dance lessons. And he said, more than she's already doing? And, I was already there at the studio 3-4 days a week. And she said, yes. And she said, and he said, does she like it? And my mom said, she loves it. And second question, he said, is she any good at it? And she said, well, from my perspective, I think she's pretty darn good. So he said, okay, we'll figure it out somehow.
Yeah, and it's such a sacrifice. If you don't have a passion for it, it's like, forget it, and a lot of people just burn out very quickly because they're like, I have no life. My kids were both swimmers, and I saw the toll it took. I mean, it's a lot of work. You're swimming before school, then after school. But interestingly enough, the swimmers do really well academically, because I think they have a new a good focus and responsibility, where they have to self-pace themselves and make sure they stay up. And with swimming, it's such a team sport, and it's an individual sport, but it's really there's a discipline that's there. So you realize, okay, I have to sacrifice what I want to do now for what the future is, right? And it seems like dancing and gymnastics are extremely, extremes of that.
Absolutely. And I think, especially for me, I ended my dance career at age 43, which is in the dance world kind of ancient. And I think it's that discipline. Obviously, I come from a coaching family, so discipline was part of our household. Also, my dad was a World War II ex-Marine. Not that he ran our household like that. However, discipline was definitely part of how we grew up, and it feels good to me. I like having routines. I like movement. So that that piece seems somewhat easy for me. I know for a lot of dancers, it's a real challenge. But I'm sort of a creature of habit. I like having those routines. They're always my go-to. In fact, when I saw the title, Life's Best Medicine, I was thinking, what is my life's best medicine? Probably movement of all kinds. Again, another anecdote from my mom. I used to love to do handstands and walk on my hands as a kid. She said, sometimes I think I've seen you more upside down than right side up.
Yeah, and it's great when you have that passion, you know that's your drive, and you know you feel well when you're moving. For me, I know if I'm not working out regularly, I start to get on edge and my back starts hurting. I get antsy, and I could tell you have a lot of energy too. And being a dancer, it's so hard. And early on, I would see athletes injure their knee, they blow their knee out and they get depressed. And I thought, oh, they're depressed because they can't be in their sport. But really, it's the lack of exercise and activity. Once they get back to doing stuff, their mood changes dramatically. As a matter of fact, one of my patients is a triathlete, and he broke his collarbone, broke his shoulder, and he went with his partner and friends. They went skiing, and like all of his friends, they were going skiing for the day, and he loved skiing. And he was in such a bad mood. He was grumpy with everyone and snapping at them. And so his arm was still in a sling. He's in Mammoth, which has snow everywhere. And so they leave to go skiing, and they come back, and he's laughing and joking with them. And they said, "What did you do? Did you smoke something? What did you do? Like, why are you happy now?" And his partner said, "You went for a run, didn't you?" He's a police officer. And he goes, "Yeah, I couldn't stand it. I went for a run while you guys were gone. I figured." He just ran with his arm taped up in the middle of the snow. But he said, "Oh, I feel so much better. Like just doing something, being cooped up, it can be devastating for people."
Absolutely. And one of the things as a coach, I like to emphasize these days, we have to think about movement in sort of two buckets. You've got your structured exercise, whether that's going to the gym, or let's say you have a passion for Pilates, you do that, those kind of things. But we have to think about also how much we're moving during the day. Right? In 2010, I participated in this, sort of exclusive conference on the science of sedentary behavior at Stanford, and investigating how, all these hours of sitting can often negate even any of the structured exercise you're doing, even if you're a high-level athlete in that way. So I think we have to kind of really think about movement from two angles these days, not just, what are we doing to train and, strengthen our muscles.
And that's a huge deal. I think there's studies showing that it's worse than smoking, even if you're sedentary and not exercising, from all-cause mortality and cardiovascular risk and cancer risk and all those things. And so people don't realize, as a matter of fact, I just gave a talk for the Nutrition Network. They have a professional training course, and I was blessed enough to be asked to speak. They must have been desperate on speakers. Everyone must have been out of town or something. But it was really cool to see, to talk about these things and realizing the importance of exercise activity on mental functioning. So I put just for Professor Noakes, I put a slide there that says, exercise is completely useless, except if you care about these things. And it was like a whole list of all-cause mortality and all like it's in, when you look at the list, you think, man, if I could bottle that up, I'd be a multimillionaire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure someone's working on a pill for it somewhere.
Oh, sure. They work for, and that is the craziest thing in doing research. I'm looking at the effects, especially in women, of oxytocin. I just interviewed Mindy Pelz, who's talking about Fast Like a Girl, and really showing how progesterone, all the sex hormones, can get messed up if you're fasting at the wrong times, or if you're not eating the right nutrition, or if you're too strict on a diet, or too strict with your exercise. Even you could throw yourself into a cortisol excess problem. And so, it's just really interesting. But I looked at all these studies talking about oxytocin, which is the feel-good chemical, like, when you bond with your baby, or when when you exercise, when you sit in the sauna, when you're, in love, when you're happy, when you pet puppies, all these kind of things, getting a massage, oxytocin goes up, and it shifts the burden over to, making good sex hormones rather than making cortisol. But the point is, all these studies I read, at the end, they, instead of saying, hey, relax, chill out, go on vacation, do stuff you enjoy, exercise, it says, if we can only find a pill that can raise this hormone, and so there's no sprays, there's all this stuff, and they go, yeah, long term it doesn't work. Well, because you got to get your life right? Do yoga, do meditation, do prayer, whatever you're collect rocks. I don't care. I have people losing weight just doing knitting, because they don't think about food when they're knitting. Whatever it is, figuring out what works for that person.
And I think from a coaching standpoint, that's what really sort of, I would say, our niche in a way is many individuals have kind of lost sight of that health and wellness is more than just your lab results from your doctor. Not to say that's important, right? That's really important to know, but it's all these other little pieces. It's your social connections, it's how you're sleeping, it's how you deal with stress. For some people, it's going to be figuring out your eating window or your fasting regimen. For some, it's not going to be, right? For many in the dance world, fasting is probably not something they should be doing, right? Because of many restrictions they've had in the past. However, it's all those pieces. And I like to say, it's interesting you say gardening. Like, a question I'll often ask people is, what's your favorite hobby or passion? What brings joy in your life? And are you actually doing that on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so glad you said that, because all the time I ask my patients, what do you do for fun? And they look at me like, wait, what? Like they're blown away that I asked them that one question, because for me, it tells me a lot. Because then also you can connect and go, oh, you like gardening? Huh? What kind of gardening? And for me, it's fun because I learn stuff. You go, oh, you're a parasailer. Huh? What is that about? And I can learn from them. And when they know you care about their passion, then all of a sudden you make a connection, right? And it's fun. It's fun to talk about stuff like, hey, I enjoy, road biking or mountain biking, and how many bones have you broken mountain biking? And all it comes out, oh yeah, I wrecked one time, and we get into these conversations. But it's so sad that I'm finding so many people don't have anyone who asks. And the sad part is when they do ask, they have to think about it and go, wait a minute, what do I do for fun? When's the last time I had fun? Some people are so serious, I'll say, when's the last time you laughed? What makes you laugh? And go, oh, I don't know. Let me think about that. But it's sad, because if you laugh, you're raising that oxytocin. You don't need to take a drug for that.
100%. And a little bit on this flavor, I had a client one time who had kind of hit a plateau. We were getting that metabolic health on track, and things were going, in a really good direction. But then it was sort of flatlined for a while. And we started talking about about what brings joy in our life. And he started going back, and part of this had come from COVID and all the restrictions, staying at home, not getting out. We had this conversation, and he loved mentoring people. He was very good with technology. He was very good at repairing computers and doing all kinds of things. So he started once a week volunteering at a youth school for technology. And you know what happened? Everything just started, went on an uphill, right? No plateau any longer. Things just started going positively. And that was the only thing that changed, was his going back to reinvigorating where he felt, really respected. It was good for his morale. He was showing his talent. So you can't underestimate the power of passion.
Yeah, and just knowing you're contributing, having a passion for what you do and loving what you do. And so that's one thing I've really noticed in patients. As a matter of fact, just as an aside on the same topic of the effects of stress, I have a guy, he's not a stress guy. He's a CEO of a huge corporation, but he's always consistently busy and always thinking, and always his mind doesn't relax. So at dinner, he gets this, he'll get 4 texts during dinner. Hold on, honey, I'll be right with you. Hold on. Let me just respond to this real quick. And so he's kind of has a life like that. And he went off to New Mexico for a week, for 10 days, to see his grandson for the first time. And he said, guys, look, I'm leaving. Take care of the company. If it goes bankrupt, I'll fix it in 10 days. I'm not going to return text calls, nothing. Don't waste your time, because I'm not going to respond. Don't get mad at me. That's how it is. You guys are in charge. I haven't had a vacation in 15 years without being bugged by you guys. So the reins are yours. It's your company for the 10 days. So he goes there. He eats terrible food. First night, Taco Bell, his sugar goes up to 256. Then he had chips and salsa the next day. And then the next day he had biscuits and gravy for breakfast. And so everything, and then he went to lunch with his family, went to dinner. I mean, it was a disaster, and his sugars were perfect before he left. And so then he exercised one day, and he also had eggs, bacon, avocado, and his sugars were perfectly flat that day. And then that night, it was the night before he left, he got a protein bowl hamburger, like in a bowl. And his family said, look, it's your last night. The sweet potato fries are the best in the world here. You got to try them. And he had it, and his sugar goes to 180 again, crazy. So I'm looking at these numbers thinking, oh, I'm going to have to talk him off the ledge. We're going to have to get him back on track. And he was plateaued for a while before he left weight-wise, like what you're saying. Guess what? He said, Brian, you know what I did there? I wasted time. I spent time with family. We laughed. We told old stories, all this stuff. So that his net weight gain in 10 days of eating like that, negative 8.8 pounds. Negative 8. And he goes, I have to change things when I get back. So now he's taking more downtime.
Great lesson. Great lesson. Certainly, I had, I wasn't measuring my sugar. My whole story is kind of different on that. But I have to say, when I moved from New York City to Amsterdam, while the cities might be similar in their international flavor and just eclectic people everywhere, the tempo in Amsterdam was much different than New York City. And I can remember going to one of my first rehearsals, the dance rehearsal there, and I was like, I walked in and I was, all busy getting ready, putting my clothes on. And I looked and everyone was over there sitting at the table having a cup of coffee. And I thought, that's kind of strange. I've never started a rehearsal in New York City by sitting around a table having a cup of coffee. And it's very much a tradition in the Netherlands to kind of get together, see where everybody is, have a little chit chat, and then you go rehearse and work hard. It felt really bizarre at the first, but then over the years, of course, I began to love it.
Yeah, and well, that's a hugely important thing in a sense of community. With my patients, every 2 weeks, we do a Zoom meeting, or we go for a walk every other week, right? Like in between. So we either get together for a walk and just talk about life and what's going on, or we do a Zoom meeting and we talk about who's struggling with cookies this week, what's going on, who's doing great, who's dealing with stress. And it's so great because people who've been doing it for a while can mentor the new people. Plus they can look and go, I have a 76-year-old lady who's just absolutely crushed it. So these young people are like, well, if she could do it, I could probably do it, But her spirit, her joint pains are gone. It's just incredible. It's incredible what we can accomplish. But the power of community in that, where you care and you get to know them as people, not just dancers and who has the best technique. You go, wow, this person has a lot of passion for what we're doing. And so that really helps when, to make those bonds and connections on a team, when you get to know each other and say, oh, this person's always, helpful. And this person really loves what they're doing. They're very appreciative of the success they've had, and they want to share it with other people. So it's really important, I think, those building that community. And when you're always busy and don't have time to talk, you don't know anyone, it's a lonely time.
I think community is part of what is really helping people get back on track, right? There's a lot of negativity to the social media and that, but I have to say, it's one of the places, I say this a lot, and Tim Noakes says maybe I was one of his first Twitter followers, but having that community. But I think when it comes to our health and wellness, we need a team. We need a team, and we need a community. We accept that in sports and in professional dance and even in the corporate business world, and that we need coaches. We accept that we need mentors and that. And for some reason, we've sort of thought, well, we should be able to do our health and wellness on our own. That's not really true. And we're figuring that finally out, right? I say often when I give presentations, I said, I bet how many of you have your doctor and your dentist in your, agenda? You know their names, you know their numbers. Who's on your wellness team? Do you have those people in your agenda? If not, you should, right? And for everybody, it's going to be a different mix. For some people, it might be their therapist. It might be their health coach. It might be their massage therapist. It might just be their neighbor who they walk with every day, or like your patients, your group in that way, as well as those other communities. Some people, it's their church. One person I work with, and we were trying to figure out who's your support team. And he actually said, well, one of the things that's helping me with my staying on track with my food and everything is I've come back to, my men's support group at church. And I said, yes, do it, because that's fantastic. They're going to help you, give you strength in various other ways.
Yeah, and that's the hard part about community. Really, honestly, I think what I find is so many times we have such great information at our community meetings, and the people who need it the most are the ones who don't show up, right? Because they have other priorities. They're too stressed. They're too busy. They don't have time for it. It's like, man, this is the medicine you needed right here. This person right here gave you the medicine you needed, but you weren't there to see it. But it's just like Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're drinking, you're not going to go to the group. So people who are struggling the most, that need it the most, are the ones who don't show up. Because I do it, it's free. You can come anytime, right? And I dedicate my time to that. But it's amazing how many of my patients don't show up, and they're the ones struggling. And I go, look, we're spending your whole hour talking about these things that we discussed all this stuff for free last night, right? So it really is a hard thing where the people who need the community the most, the ones who are struggling, because those people don't have support at home either generally. So man, when you come together, so I have so many people that come to the group religiously. Like if they miss, I'll call them and go, "Where were you last night?" Like, because they're always there, and they're the ones who have the most success.
Yes,
right?
it's 100% true. You know, I grew up, you know, teaching gymnastics, teaching dance, teaching Pilates, teaching Iyengar yoga, now coaching. I will continually see some of the hardest part is showing up, right? And you know, I can remember my dad ran a community-wide basketball camp in the summers in Quincy, Illinois, called River City Basketball Camp. And he used to always give 3 awards. One was most improved, most valuable, and the camp award. And the camp award was for the person who showed up with the most, you know, enthusiasm, the hardest work, was there to help motivate people all the way. So, and that was a coveted award.
Yeah. And also, you know, I've always I look back, well, you know, I don't know if you know much of my history, but I worked 18 years in standard medicine. Then I switched over to doing direct primary care, focusing on metabolic health. And I really feel guilty that I'm cheating the system in this way. The patients who are seeking me out want to get healthier and they want to do better. Before, 90% of the time, people didn't care. They go, just give me the pill. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to exercise. I'm not going to do those things. And so then you see them getting worse and worse. So that's not fun for me. But if you have someone who goes, hey, how can I get off my insulin? How can I get off my meds? And just had a patient yesterday. She was actually on fat fiction. And you know, she comes off 150 units 3 times a day of insulin, right? It's a miracle. I was like, man, it's still crazy to me that she was able to do those things. And she's gone back on it and come back off it. And, you know, her husband recently passed, so it was a stressful time. And so now she's ready to get back in and she's going to her exercise classes again and she's taking care of herself. And so, you know, sometimes it's the life stresses can beat us down. And that's one of the funny things when people study obesity and binge eating and things like that. They're studying in mice who aren't going through divorce or losing their husband or, you know, having a stressful boss that you have to deal with every day. And so having a health coach that's someone that's there that you can go, look, I had a hard week and, you know, I struggle a little bit, and that we could be there and support them.
You know, absolutely. I mean, the it's not problem, I would say the challenge with just general individual health and well-being is there's always change, right? Whether you believe the whole trans-theoretical model of change, right, that we go through pre-contemplation, contemplation, right, action, and then maintenance, and then, you know, carrying on. And then we're going to go up and down that chain throughout life, right? Because stuff happens. And I think that's where the coaches are really helping to fill in the gaps, because still within maybe what someone might call a setback, there's still going to be something to celebrate in there. You know,
totally true. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that, you know, we can really become obsessed with, oh my God, I gained 2 pounds, or oh my God, I ate that second piece of pizza, you know. But you know what? I exercised 3-4 times this week. You know, I took a couple walks with the dog. So it's helping people remind themselves there is a lot you're already doing pretty well. We're just going to try to spice that up a little bit. And we're going to work on those things that are kind of, you know, evolving here.
That's a huge, and especially individualizing it for the patient in that, for instance, one of my patients, she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I don't want to talk to you because I went out and I had a margarita. We went for Mexican food. I had a margarita. And I go, well, you know, your sugar spiked like that just because you had the margarita, probably some chips and salsa. She goes, no, I didn't have chips and salsa. Oh, you didn't? Why not? Do you like? I love those, but I knew it was bad, and I didn't have this, and I didn't have that, and so she said, you know, I got the beans instead of the rice, and she made I go, you made a lot of great choices. You made one dumb mistake, and you enjoyed it. Who cares? Don't feel bad about it. Don't beat yourself up. And next time you're going to say, okay, it's not worth it, because, you know, she didn't know that it would spike her that much, right? That would make her sugars crazy. And so it's fun. As a matter of fact, I have a couple PAs working with me right now, and I said, let's put a CGM on you, and they're super metabolically healthy. But the funny thing is, he says, oh my gosh, I had 2 handfuls of cereal that I just grabbed going out the door without even thinking about it. He goes, my sugars spike like crazy. And he showed me his tracing. And then he said, the other one is protein bars. If I have protein bars, my sugars go crazy. And so this is lean, healthy fit athlete, you know, and so you go, man, what would that do to the rest of us if we're in, you know, I know in my experience, I would just have a protein bar at lunch, or I have a protein bar, you know, for a snack, and you realize, oh my goodness, what was I doing back then when I didn't know any better?
Absolutely. I love working with the CGM for as many individuals as can, you know, arrange it. Again, you know, part of the health coach, you work with a variety of people, a variety of doctors and systems, and insurance will cover this, insurance won't cover that. But as a learning tool, you know, funny thing, my funny story of my own, you know, I would consider myself pretty, these days, metabolically fit. I wasn't in my 40s for sure, and that's a whole other story. But just the insights, what was really, when my blood sugar spiked the most when I was wearing a CGM was with a sweet potato. And you know, we kind of have this idea, oh, it's the regular potatoes that are, you know, going to spike you more, but maybe I'm just more sensitive to those. But that was a very interesting experiment. Like went up like close 200, but also it was alone, right? Not combined with anything. So it's
it's funny too. Last night, as a matter of fact, you know, I was it was funny because there's a keto cereal, and it was sitting in my cabinet. So I told my PA students, I go, look, I'm gonna have that cereal tonight. I'll show you what it does to my sugars, right? Because I figured it was gonna not be really a good thing. So my wife and I had to run off somewhere to drop her car off at the car dealership. So I got home, and she goes, oh, I made dinner for you. And it was like steak, and there was some steak and another meat with some balsamic vinegar sauce on it. So I had that. And while I was waiting for her, I wasn't thinking about it, but I go, oh, there's blueberries. I haven't had blueberries in a while. So I took a couple handfuls of blueberries, right? And then we're coming back, and I go, oh, I'm going to check my sugars because I'm going to do that cereal thing when I get home. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? My sugars went crazy. And I couldn't remember the blueberries. I said, what kind of sauce did you put on that steak? She goes, just a little balsamic, and that's it. And I was like, balsamic did that? Wow. And then when I got home, I was getting some water out of the fridge, and I looked at the blueberries. I'm like, oh, that's what did it. It was the blueberries that did it, right? And I was like, wow, for me, but I have other people that eat blueberries all the time, and they don't have a problem. And one of my patients, he eats a banana, his sugars goes to 280. He ate 6 kiwis, and it did nothing to his sugars. I was like, how can, and he wrote down, I go, you didn't really eat 6 kiwis, right? He goes, no, I did. I was craving them, and I just had them. I was like, wow, it didn't do anything at all, you know? And so for some people, they have 1 kiwi and their sugars go high. So it's really amazing how with this bio-individuality, it may have to do with the gut microbiome, may have to do with stress hormones or your metabolic health as a starting point.
And again, that gets back to the whole key. I mean, you know, Garrett Taubes and many others, Nita Teicholz, you know, before World War II, gaining weight or any of these sort of issues that we had, not only from the weight perspective, but inflammation, all our sort of efforts we're calling it a hormonal dysfunction, right? It wasn't about calories in or calories out. And, you know, somewhere along the way, we lost that idea that it could be a hormonal dysfunction. But what you see in reality with CGMs, with individuality in terms of foods, but also just individualities and how people, you know, can achieve metabolic health. But for me, having poor metabolic health, I didn't gain weight, but I had extreme joint problems, joints, tissue, you know, energy problems. So for me, that inflammation manifested in a different way. It didn't manifest in that I gained a lot of weight, but I had sure a host of other problems that through getting better metabolic health, those went away.
Yeah, and that's the amazing part is, and so many times we just focus on the weight and we don't think about all the other stuff. Just this morning, I had a conversation with my wife. She's been doing pretty strict low carb, and she's been doing some Mindy Pell stuff of, you know, a 30-day reset of saying, okay, have some sweet potatoes one day, have this, have different things depending where you are in your cycle, right? Just to make sure you're not going to this cortisol by being too strict. And so anyway, she said, you know what? The reason she did it initially is that she was having numbness in her left arm because her neck, she has a lot of degenerative disc disease up there, right? So she goes, you know what? My arm hasn't been numb in like since January, since I started doing low carb and cut out alcohol, cut out pro-inflammatory stuff. She said, it's remarkable. Actually, it's shocking to her because she's thinking I should be in pain and I'm not. You know, you could see her, obviously she doesn't have weight issues. So it wasn't a weight thing. She just says, I don't feel inflamed. I don't feel bloated. My stomach doesn't hurt. Everything feels great. And, you know, she goes, I just want to continue doing this lifestyle because I feel so good. Plus, the other fun thing is that she never goes to the gym. She walks, she does other stuff, but she doesn't show up. So once she started doing this, all of a sudden I'm working out. I go, that lady looks just like my wife. And then that's over there. I'm like, that is my wife. What are you doing here? Yeah. Because her shoulder was hurting. Everything was hurting so bad. She couldn't really work out. So now she's like, I feel so good. I felt like I had energy and I just wanted to come work out. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So things change. It's not you're working out just to lose weight. It's saying, hey, I feel good when I'm working out and I feel strong.
And I think those are maybe the issues we don't talk about enough when it comes to this low carbohydrate, and I call it a lifestyle. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And a little interlude. I love Ted Nyman's comment, start eating now the way you want to eat the rest of your life. And that's certainly the way I feel at 60 plus. It's not just a weight issue why I like this lifestyle. It's because I have focus. I can move much better than I think many at my age. I have energy. These things that we call mood. I can remember when I was vegetarian, I would come out after rehearsal, like dance rehearsals would be 5-6 hours long. And it would be, don't get in my way because I need food now or I'm going to bite your head off, right? That hangry feeling constantly. You feel like you're up and down, because when I was vegetarian, I taken all the meat and all that stuff out and just replaced it with tons of carbohydrates because I needed fuel. I was, active, really active. But these things like mood and focus and energy and mobility and less inflammation in your joints, we need to talk about that also in our community, because that's just as important as the weight piece. And I don't know if you saw that recent study, Metabolic Mike had it. I haven't been able to dive into all of it, about the fact that a lot of sort of longevity keeps pointing to, I know Metabolic Mike talks about it, Mike Mitzel, Gabrielle Leon talks about it, that more and more is coming out is the quality of your muscles, the strength of your muscles, grip strength. We also, Peter Attia talks about that as well, that's showing up more and more as a sign of longevity, right? So
there's no question. Yeah, there's no question. Ben Bakiki was telling, I go, come on, Ben, show me the studies. And he sent me the study. I'm like, okay, but yeah, having muscle mass is a huge thing. And that's what I think, and I don't want to attack anyone's, if they feel better and this works for them. But I'm saying, I've seen a lot of vegans with depression, anxiety, stress, insomnia, worried about life, very, can be militant in certain areas. And there's lack of muscle mass. And you think, gosh, now we have increased risk of osteoporosis, fractures, all these things are going to throw us back. And you say, well, because everyone, it seems like to me, veganism is innocent till proven guilty and low carb is guilty till proven innocent, right? So there's a different approach where we don't have data, but I've seen just anecdotally my patients do worse. And a lot of times when I have someone come to me with a lot of health problems, I'll go, what's your diet like in this? Like a lot of times it's vegan. And then depression, anxiety, because all that affects pain levels gets worse if you're depressed and anxious and stressed and not sleeping. So all these things kind of play in a circle. And so if you're not getting a good protein source, and it can be done, it definitely can be done, but it's way more challenging, especially if you don't eat eggs at all. If I get a vegetarian who will eat eggs, they can improve dramatically just from making that one step, or adding in maybe some dairy or some kind of protein source, cheese even. Some people won't eat cheese, dairy, nuts, nothing. And it seems like they struggle a lot more.
100%, and certainly anecdotally coming from the professional dance world, we see also fractures, more prone to getting hurt, the mood disorders. I recently just did the course with Dr. Georgia Eid on mental health and ketogenic nutrition. Fabulous course, by the way, lots of great information. And I wanted to do it also just having that background and seeing a lot of people struggle, because dancers are always obsessed about their weight, right? It's inherent in the profession. And I feel as a coach, if there's one group of people that I would love to support, and I do, they are a certain part of my clientele. But we've the world have sort of glorified that vegan's the way or vegetarian's the way. And I can tell you, I was 20 years that way. And I'm still struggling with some of the residuals, of a deprived nutritional source for many years. That is, there's still going to be some manifestation of that. But I think when the more that we can accentuate the improvements that you can gain, but it's also helping people that there isn't a switch you can, when I said, okay, I'm going to start adding eggs, I sort of dipped my toe in the water, right? I'll add eggs and then maybe have some fish, right? And slowly work my way into the meat. We have to also be able to help people if they're willing to do that. But the improvements are pretty striking.
Yeah, and I've seen that too, and it's hard because there's ethical reasons, there's religious reasons why you may not be eating meat and things like that. So you want to be respectful of those things. But if you can add in eggs, if that's ethically okay for you, I've seen dramatic improvements just from that, just adding some egg protein, egg white protein, or the egg yolks for mental functioning. There's a lot of nutrition that people don't realize that. Frankly, you can get, if you look at the nutritional content of meat, it's absolutely ridiculous how much protein content and vitamins and minerals and all this stuff. So, I've seen infograms, where they show this and you go, oh my goodness, they show all the vitamin content. And you go, this has to be vegetables. And it's like, oh, that's all meat. Here's the vegetables. And you're like, wow, that's a big difference really, if you're doing it for just specifically nutritional gains. And like you said, muscle mass is a huge thing. Even in smokers, they show that they do better. Or, if you have bad lifestyle, but you put on muscle mass, people do better. And I see it clinically because the more muscle mass someone has, the less likely they are to have more visceral fat, because the muscle mass will unless they're doing stuff like, some of these bodybuilders who are getting metabolically sick, what they're doing, even though they have six-pack abs, it's over top of big visceral fat because they're shooting insulin, eating a lot of carbs, and that insulin carbs together and the stress hormones shoves it all to the visceral fat. So even though they don't have love handles, which are actually protective against cardiovascular disease, it's all on the inside in the visceral fat. So they're dying at a young age just because of what they're doing lifestyle wise, because they're using insulin as an anabolic effect to build muscle mass.
I think this is key. One of the things that I really hope with anyone who works with me is, a vast majority of people don't even really understand the 5 markers of metabolic health, right? So, and, understanding what those, because we are, very much a cholesterol obsessed nation because we have a pill for that. But understanding what you're talking about of, the deleterious effect of visceral fat. And you can be thin, right? I'm sure I had a lot of visceral fat as a very thin, metabolically unfit, dancer, post 20 years vegetarian, with extreme joint issues, right? You can be the tofu, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. But educating people to understand the 5 markers of metabolic health, and that, you may not see a real big, especially in the beginning with many women post-menopausal or in the stages of menopausal, that scale may not change right away, but your waist circumference might, right? And understanding, track that waist measurement, track your waist to height measurement, and understanding that also when you start feeling good. I had somebody tell me yesterday, she was all excited because she was going out, and I hope I'm not sharing too much information, to buy some new pants and some new underwear because they didn't fit anymore. And woohoo, that's great, right? Because it's working, right? We're targeting, and you may not see this huge, decrease on the scale, but if we're targeting visceral fat, we're winning, right?
That is a take-home message. Anyone listening, I'm telling you, I have a guy, when you see his sugar tracings, it's ridiculous, but his sugars were 260, 270 when he came to me. 4 weeks later, he's running 80s and 90s. We had to stop all of his diabetes medicines, but he lost 4 pounds in this process, 4 pounds, reversing his diabetes. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I was like apologizing. He was there with his wife who's supporting him. She starts out weighing 158 pounds. She lost 28 pounds, I think, in the same time he lost 4. He was from 320 to 316 pounds, and metabolically he gets so much healthier. But guess what? His wife says, we're so happy. And he's thrilled. I go, why are you so happy with 4 pounds of weight loss in a month? And he said, you know what? My pants are falling off. My shirts are loose. Everything's better. And I said, well, that's kind of ridiculous. I go, let's measure him. So, and his wife says, no, he's lost weight. And I said, why do you know? She said, when I hug him before, I couldn't touch my fingertips around his belly. She said, now I can grab my wrists around him.
I love it.
We measured him 6.5 inches off his waist with 4 pounds of weight loss, right? It's not about the weight. So people see that and they give up and they go, forget it. I only lost 4 pounds. I'm not doing this anymore. It's not worth it, right? But his wife was so metabolic. He had 13 liters of visceral fat to start with. Now he's down to like 4, now over time, but his wife had no visceral fat, so she just burned subcutaneous fat very quickly. That's a less dense energy source than the visceral fat. It's more like oak, and you're burning little twigs. So that's why some people who are thinner can lose weight so quickly eating the same thing an obese person would eat. It's how your body can access the fat stores.
Absolutely. And I think from the female perspective, because again, we've been kind of ingrained to look at that scale, right? And I'll tell you a funny story about myself a little bit. But I had a client after 8 sessions, and we got together for our next session, and I could see in her face she was a little kind of, not really sad, but there wasn't her sort of little spunk that I usually saw. And she said, well, 2 things. She said, I just got my recent labs back and I got the best labs I've ever had. And I said, well, how come the frown?
Yeah.
And she said, you know what? I lost 4 inches around my waist. I said, double question, how come the frown? I only lost like 6 pounds. Okay. All right. Can we reevaluate here?
Yeah. And as you lose visceral fat, you put on muscle mass. So who cares what the scale? If you're putting on muscle mass, as we just discussed, you're going to do that much better. So you could starve yourself. As a matter of fact, I just read an article about some of the new miracle drugs for weight loss. A huge percentage of that weight loss is muscle mass. So if you lose muscle mass, that isn't like, so I have people all the time that come to me after doing, 6 months of a liquid diet, they're eating 800 calories a day and they're losing weight, 52. One of my guys lost 52 pounds. And then he comes to me and in the next month he loses 0 pounds, but he was eating way more calories in protein and fat. And he put on like 12 pounds of muscle. Right. So he was losing visceral fat and putting on muscle, because if you lose muscle, you can't get rid of the visceral fat. So you get yourself into a bad situation with this huge calorie restriction problem.
Absolutely. And, let's talk about calories, because I work with a lot of women who are age 50 and above. And one, the system has done them a huge disservice. They have sort of vilified them for gaining weight, looked at them like it was their fault, let them gluttony and sloth, as Robert Lipstick says, have, treated them with some kind of disdain in that. And actually, you know what? They're basically starving. Their cells are not getting energy. They have been on these low calorie diets forever, I want to say.
Brain fog, fatigue, depression, insomnia, we see it all.
You see it all. And, I say to them, our first job as working together as partners is to say, you know what, we're focusing on you getting healthy, right? And I think Dr. Eric Berg says this a lot. You have to get healthy before you lose weight, right? And my outset is, I love it when people come to me. I just like to lower my HbA1c. Woo-hoo, let's go, right? I would like to get my metabolic health markers in a better direction. Let's roll on that, because that at the end of the day, that's what's going to carry you much, much longer.
That's an amen for me. Yeah, that's so important. Like those markers, that's why I check the insulin level, the triglycerides, HDL, all these things. And you say, look, everything's going the right way. You might lose 2 pounds, but who cares? Look at, you're healthier. You're going to live longer. You're not going to be dependent on other people to help you. So that's why it's so important. And, it's become abundantly clear to me that I can't do it all. I'm a limited resource. So having health coaches, people who understand and really can do the day to day, and then, I could analyze the labs, see how things are going, and follow up and be a secondary coach type thing. But the importance of having a coach that you're connecting with, that believes in you, that's there if you're struggling, you can text them and go, hey, I'm struggling right now. Things aren't going the right way. I'm having trouble at work, whatever it is. And I see the benefit of that, of how we could all play our role, because the reality, and this is what's a sad truth, is I have patients coming from different states. They'll fly into San Diego to see me. They'll come from Arizona. I have a ton of patients. So I want to build a community there. And then also, Northern California, but they don't have doctors in between who understand this stuff. So, but I can only see so many patients. So, I'm booked out for a while now, which is a good problem to have, I guess, but it's not good for patients. But if I could say, hey, look, I'll see you once a month just to do the labs and check all this stuff, and have a health coach that's doing the rest of the stuff and the day-to-day, week-to-week stuff, then we can reach so many more people that way.
Absolutely. It really does take a team, that whole, I know it takes a village is maybe a cliche, but some cliches are true. And when it comes to our health and wellness, kind of where we started to saying, You really need to have a team. Coaches do, I think we fill in the gaps, right? We provide extra accountability. We provide support. People have questions about stuff. I'll get somebody at the grocery store and they'll shoot a picture of this kind of thing. And what do you think about this? Show me the ingredients, flip it around. Let's talk about that. And, what'd you have for breakfast, by the way? Are you hungry? Let's look at, that last meal and why maybe you think you need a snack or something. We look at their sleep pattern. We look at, as I said before, what are you doing in terms of daily movement as well as structured exercise? How about the planning piece, right? That's also where coaches can help out, because a lot of this, trying to get a new system or get on track in a new direction, requires a little more planning, whether that's food prep or just thinking about who's going to be doing the shopping, who's going to help you out. Is your household on board, or other people doing other things there? Because that's something that the coach has to also help out. Because some people, the coach might be their only support. Everybody else in the house, wants to do something else. That's challenging, but we can work with it. And I think it still comes back to, there's not a lot of help for individuals in celebrating those pieces that are working well. We constantly are beating people up about, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you only lost 2 pounds. That's not helpful when you're trying to make change.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, is supporting the wins and saying, okay, look, you blew it. Okay, we learned from it. What did you learn? Then it wasn't in vain. You learned something. So yeah, I felt terrible when I had that donut. My stomach hurt for 2 days and I was upset with myself. So, okay, write that down. So next time you want the donut, you can look back at that and go, look, I was feeling so great. And then I went off course because of this, right? So when you start realizing, that's one of the first questions I ask people, like, what's your kryptonite? And I'll say, I gained a lot of weight eating chips and salsa and tortillas and on my Friday nights with my wife and things like that. So I changed that habit. I had to say, okay, that's my kryptonite. I don't go to Mexican food restaurants, right? Except maybe once or twice a year. So, and then you can decide not to have chips and salsa and you actually survive, believe it or not, you can survive that. And so, it's really amazing. So when people know, I actually have a lady, she's had a few struggles lately, and she goes, guess what I did Sunday, doc? I go, what? She goes, I emptied every piece of junk food out of my house. It's gone. I threw it away. And I go, is that hard? She goes, it was really hard. It was really hard because you love those things. So she said, I called my neighbors, say, hey, come over, cake, whatever you want. The rest is going to the garbage. Yeah. If you guys want to eat that stuff, I'm not doing it anymore. So, so it's one of those things. It's such a hard thing because we have an emotional attachment to food and different, things that calm our nerves. And so, yeah, it's great to have a coach who can support you in that. And even, and I think it's even more important where people don't have the family support or social support. If you're single and you're by yourself, it's hard to stay accountable. Or if you have a partner who's eating ice cream every night, it's going to be a challenge for you. So I think really having someone who's in your corner, that they know that you care and that you're like, hey, let's work it out. You blew it. Okay, big deal. Let's move on from here. Instead of going off trail for, it's like, I was reading about, like, if they fly from New York to Los Angeles, how many course corrections they have to do. Like hundreds and thousands of course correct. If you're off just a little bit at the beginning, you never course correct, you're gone. You're going to end up in another country. But you have to do these course corrections. That's okay. We learn and then you change course. And one of my best guys is Jason Fung. We were talking the other day, and he's just great because I said, Jason, what do you say to people who don't believe, who think it's really, there's doctors, mostly vegan doctors, who think it's malpractice to use a CGM in non-diabetic patients, and they've made that very clear publicly. And I go, what do you think about that? And he goes, yeah, those are probably the same people who practice free throws, like your dad's being the basketball coach, without ever using a basketball, a backboard or a hoop. Because you can't correct. You can't correct. You can't say, oh, that was bad. I can't say, ooh, those handfuls of blueberries. Let me check that out in a week or two and see if it does the same thing again. If it does, then it tells me something. So I have patients who are not rocket scientists, but they figure out very quickly. They go, oh, look at that. When I have this certain thing, it makes my sugars. For instance, one of the biggest offenders I've seen that surprises people, well, white rice for sure, or brown rice for sure. And then also like a cauliflower crust pizza, they'll get like when they go for pizza, and their sugars are worse with that than it is with regular pizza crust, so you go, okay, I see that. it's not my opinion. That's what it does to you. So you change what you're doing. They go, look, when I have when my neighbor actually had Kentucky Fried Chicken and his sugars went through the roof. He's diabetic. And then my wife said, you know what, let me make you chicken tomorrow night. And she made some great, fried chicken in the air fryer with with the panko crust from the pork rinds. And it was fantastic. It was with a bunch of herbs and spices, and it was fantastic. He was like, "Oh my gosh, it didn't even taste good yesterday. Look how great this is, and it's real meat. And it's real, But his sugars did not move; they went down actually when he ate that. Or you can make a sausage crust pizza if you want pizza. There's so many things you can do that just work.
But I think also, kind of what one of your points when you started out there too is helping people through transitions. There is no linear line to life. It's got ups and downs and changes, and being able to adjust, and CGMs give great information to say, well, look at that. That's pretty interesting. And they might do it again at some other point, but you're there to sort of help them figure it out, find some alternatives, and sort of be their partner along the way, because, life is always changing. And I think one of the things also that in health, one of the first questions I will often ask to someone I'm working with is, what is health to you? Is that, be there for your grandkids? Is that be able to move better, be able to, focus and enjoy my social life with other people? But we need to be reminded of that it's not, again, just a number on a scale or one, number from a blood lipid panel, but it is, why are we doing this? And to keep people on track and remind them about their whys.
Yeah. If you don't know your why, like, you better know that. Yeah, that is really, because times are going to get tough. And one of my patients, he's lost 68 pounds. He's close to making a big barrier. But then he threw his shoulder out, and his shoulder's been hurting. So his exercise fell. Then he got depressed. Then he started eating. And then he went off the rails for a little while. And I just saw him yesterday. He was down 13 pounds in the last 10 days. He's totally on track. He goes, Doc, my knees don't hurt. My shoulder's getting better. He goes, I'm positive. And he actually, I'm going to get him on the podcast because his story is amazing. He was working 2 jobs. He's very motivated, right? Works 2 jobs. And he goes, you know what? When I hurt my shoulder, they didn't care about me. They treated me like terrible. And I just wanted a few days off to recover. And they said, no, they need me. You can work through it, type thing. And he goes, you know what? I'm just going to work for this other company now. And they said, they're making a special position for me so I can make more money and be able to work less hours. And he goes, it's perfect. Now I can go back to school. Now I can do, but his passion. But the one thing that was really telling yesterday, and I was so glad I had my PA students here to hear it. He said, you know what? You said to me last time I was here, okay, you went off the rails, big deal. Start today, get back on track. We got this. Look where you've come, how far you're way ahead of the game still from where you started, and trust the process. He said, I had to trust. He said, I lost trust in the process. And he said, once I trust the process again, I'm doing so much better, because I realized that I feel terrible when I'm eating that way. And if I go backwards, I'm going to go back to where I was. And so realizing I want to move forward. And he was so positive and laughing yesterday. And he said, different person than when I saw him after the holidays, when he just kind of, went off track. And he goes, I was feeling so great and everything was so good. Why did I do that? And so you can't change it. Let's move forward, right? Forget it. Your sins of your past are forgiven. Let's move on today. And now he's crushing it. I'm like, I'm jealous of you now. What did you do? This is crazy. But, even though he's limiting his workout because of his shoulder, he goes, Doc, my knees don't hurt at all. And it has to do with his gut inflammation and stress. So once we get his sleep right, we get his stress under, I go, you're going to be dangerous, man, because you're going to reach all your goals. Like, you're making great changes in life. Because he said, like, I'm working all the time. He goes, he had to, in order to, he's working, 18 hours a day, pretty much, with 2 different jobs, right? So it's like, oh my goodness, how do you get time to sleep or exercise or take care of yourself or laugh? He said, I don't, I'm just working all the time. So once you realize that, you make these little changes, and that's a huge deal in life going forward. Because who wants to be that person who's 500 pounds that can't get off the couch, but you have a ton of money in the bank account, right? But you're getting amputations and you're on dialysis. Who wants that?
Yeah, I've said this many times, and I spent many years as an executive coach, is that, we talk about financial investments and saving for your future. Like, if you're not investing in your health, all of that doesn't matter at all, right? Because it's going to be very short. You're going to have a short window on where you can spend that money. But what you're describing about your patient is what we call in the performance mindset, right? You know, none of us can change, you and I can't change how we ended up at this moment having this conversation. We sure can change how we walk out of here, where we go next, right? That's sort of looking towards the future. As a former professional dancer, when you're in one job, you have to always keep your eye on the next one if you want to pay your rent, right? So you're going to be auditioning, right? So it's not only this piece, but it's that forward piece. And that's what we do in coaching, is try to help people keep, you know, some of this, there's going to be some backward steps, but finding that rhythm to kind of keep moving forward towards the future.
Yeah, and I have to ask you, you know, you already answered the question before I could ask it, right? But life's best medicine for you. You said movement, it was life's best medicine. How about as far as from your coaching standpoint or life standpoint? Where do you go when things are tough, when you're struggling, when things are, you know, life's not perfect? What's your foundation that you go, okay, ultimately, here's what matters?
Get outside, right? Get some sunshine. I've been lucky, you know, certainly there wasn't a lot of sunshine living in the Netherlands for 2 decades in Northern Europe, but
in Arizona, you get your fair share of sunshine.
Yeah, but getting outside and getting sunshine, even just somewhat sad, but you know, I remember the day my mom passed away. What's the first thing I did? Go outside, take a run, get outside. That's how I grew up. Movement heals, particularly outdoors. Whether it's raining, whatever the elements are, there's something healing about the outdoors in nature. We know for our stress levels. I've always had a strong social and friend connection. One of the things you learn also in the performing arts is to reach out to people if, right, you know, not only when it's a 911, but when you're feeling you need some support, call a friend, reach out, do something, go out and about. I love seeing artwork, obviously being in the professional arts, performing arts, that always makes me feel good, seeing how clever someone else can be. Those are sort of my go-tos, I would say.
That's great. Yeah, it's great. I mean, finding your passion, stuff you enjoy, and again, like you said, seeing the creativity in other people. And I think that's one of the gifts we have being a doctor and a coach is we can see the final product even if the person doesn't see it yet. Like we could see what they can do and how we're like, we trust the process because we've seen it happen so many times. So it's great that we can work together, and we're going to have to build some community in Arizona. I'm going to start visiting y'all more often, and hopefully we can build a good low carb keto community out there and, you know, focus on lifestyle and getting out. I mean, there's so much beautiful, you know, beautiful places to hike and go out and do stuff and build a community. So we'll have to do that. And how do people who want to track you down, and there is a low carb community in Arizona, do you have any information on that, or how do people track you down to get involved with you, or if they want your services as a health coach?
Absolutely. So I am square one wellness everywhere. And that whole idea, bring it back to square one, try to make it simple, easy, fun, but also improve your metabolic health. So on Twitter at square one, the number wellness. On Instagram, same thing, Square One Wellness. My website, also Square One Wellness. So really easy to remember, and I'm happy to connect and so excited that you're going to maybe be spending some more time in Arizona. Love to have your passion and good work in this area. And it's all about building community.
Yeah, and we can do that. We have all the tools. I know a lot of good people in Arizona. Dr. Ben Bakikio, who's a good friend of mine now. He's, you know, doing the exercise component with many of my patients. And there's so many good pharmacists down there that I've connected with on the podcast. That's why I love doing this, because I get to connect with great people like you, and we can help people, you know, and we have to realize that we don't have all the tools individually, but as a team, man, we can do some great stuff. So I'm really excited to be a part of that community and help it grow too. So yeah, we'll be spending some time together in the future, and we do share patients. And I want to make it very clear. My patient yesterday that I talked to said that you had a huge impact on her. Make sure you say how great she is and how kind she is and how decent, and she made me think differently. And this is a very successful, you know what I'm talking about, a very successful business person. And I was kind of teasing. I go, you're so successful and you have 3 health coaches. Why? You have me, you got Krisna, and you have a business coach, right? And I think it's funny when people are successful that still have a coach, because they realize the benefit of saying, let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's try something different, because we all get into our niche and go, this is the way it's done, rather than sitting back and going, well, I've tried that, Sonny, and here's how it works, right? It doesn't work that way. So it's great from a health perspective, because the other thing that I've heard so many times is I have people that they'll come in and they go, look, I read Jason Fung's book. I understand that. I read this book. I read Nina Teichol's. I read, Gary Taubes, but I just can't put it into place in my life. So having a coach who says, okay, here's how we put those pieces together. And that's what my Talk for Nutrition Network is like. How do we put all this together? It's not just having the knowledge. You could read about golf all you want, but you have to go play the game at some point, right? You could read about being a doctor, but until you're there making these decisions, you don't know what it's like. Until you drive the car, you could read all about it until you're actually behind the wheel. Now you have responsibilities, and it may be different if you hit ice or snow or whatever. Are you getting snow? I mean, do you guys have big storms coming in?
We had snow in Tucson last week. It was pretty
wow.
But again, it comes back to this point: is we know, accept, and are willing to think we need coaches in all kinds of other aspects of our lives. So now it's kind of saying we also need them when it comes to our health and well-being. And give you one last anecdote about someone I'm working with. She's a former Olympian swimmer. Amazing, right? History. Olympians also need coaches when it comes to their health and wellness. Right? They know all about coaching. They know all about training, but we all need support. I wish when I had been going through my health journey that I had someone. Luckily, my husband is really smart. We kind of helped each other figure it out. We read all the books. We went down the rabbit hole. Gary Taubes, Nina Teichol's, Days and Fung, everything. We just absorbed it all. But having a coach just helps you put it all together.
Yeah, that's huge, everyone. I mean, really, if you're struggling, if you're depressed, you're lonely, all these things, get a coach, reach out, don't suffer in silence. And, for all my listeners and Patreon supporters, greatly appreciate you keeping this podcast going. And, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. There's a lot of other good things here. And think about this oxytocin thing. If you're stressed and tense and, you're counting every calorie and you're worried about every detail, it's like, okay, sometimes you got to take a breath. Yeah, that's going to help you more than anything. So hopefully that comes out very clear in what we're saying here. And, don't be too easy on yourself, but don't be too tough on yourself too. Because some people blow it every week and they go, oh, I blew it again. Okay, well, but you're not going to get results that way. But also, if you blow it one time, don't, it's not the end of the road. It's just a little dent on the car. You don't smash the whole car, right? Just take it easy, one step at a time. And I would say, again, trust the process, trust your coach, get people who you can trust that have your best interests at hand, not just want to make a buck off you. So, Krisna, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And, thank you for your positivity and what you're doing in the community. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be on your show, and thank you for all your work in this community. And let's make it happen together.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.